month's Talking Tim webinar. We're going to get started in just a moment here. Joining us today, before I turn it over to Paul Jordan and Jim Ostrich of FHWA, a few just small announcements. One, as always, the webinar slides and recording will be available. Encourage you all to sign up for the No Code newsletter to most easily access those as soon as they're available. I'll put a link in the chat box here in a moment. Also, for upcoming webinars, I think a few will be mentioned here, some of the upcoming activities related to traffic incident management on events and Crash Responder Safety Week. All of our webinars are available on the website in our calendar section. Put a link here in the chat box to access that as well, so check both of those. As always, a big thank you to Jim and Paul and Joe and the entire team at the FHWA Traffic Incident Management Program for bringing this webinar and organizing everything and bringing such fantastic speakers. I know we're going to hear from 3 different people this week, and this is just continues an outstanding webinar series being brought to you by FHWA. On the NOCO website and then the YouTube channel, you can find presentations from Talking Tim webinars for the past 3 years, so be sure to take a look at that. Jim, Paul, Joe, thank you again, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Adam. A big thank you to you and the National Operations Center of Excellence, and then Kevin Vita from ITS America, who is actually doing the real hard work behind this webinar and be taking over for Nilu. But you know, we really appreciate everyone that's joining us on behalf of the Federal Highway Administration and the TIM program. Myself, Jim Ostrich, Joe Tebow, we welcome you and thank you for joining us. We continue to make progress with the National TIM program and with each and every one of you advancing the state of the practice. We have, once again, some very interesting speakers, a wide range of speakers here, and we're excited to present to you today Sergeant Tom Brengel from the Illinois State Police. So we'll be talking about smart lighting for responder vehicles. As you know, responder safety is the most important aspect of TIM for all of us, and the sergeant and some folks from the Illinois State Police have been playing around with, you know, working up plan, but working and researching some best approaches to using that smart lighting when oftentimes the responder is out there by himself, him or herself. They have that smart lighting that might be able to help, and we're hoping that this shows a lot of promise. He's actually going to go last, but first up we're going to have Captain Robert Hainje of the Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Office and out of Indiana, and the captain is, you know, I'm not reading everyone's bio, but I'm just going to say that Captain Hainje has been very supportive of us on national traffic, the Everyday Counts national team, and has done some tremendous work with UAS in particular, and you know, as we move the nation forward, we're interested in technology and use of unmanned systems beyond just crash reconstruction, because a lot of folks are using that, police are using that for UAS for crash reconstruction now. And certainly not last, but not least, because he'll be second, is Chief Bill Jenaway from Responder Safety Institute in this role. I'm going to talk about the new struck by incident reporting system that they're coordinating with Federal Highway is helping Jim Ostrich from our team. So with that, I think we'll let go to the next slide. That's what I wanted to do. Just a reminder, May 25th is our next Talking Tim webinar. The speakers will be Katie Felton from the Virginia DOT on some cool uses of TIM data and how they're visualizing it. Linda Unruh is, some of you may have heard her speak before. She is, she had lost a son on the highway on a recovery incident, recovery of an incident, and she's been doing some speaking nationally about roadway safety and in cooperation with some national organizations. So we want to hear from her, and she's always provides a compelling story. And from the New Jersey Temp program, they haven't presented on Talking Tim in a while, and I called them on it because they have an advanced program, one of the best programs in the country. They're doing a lot of things very, very good in providing leadership that that others can learn from. So with that, will be May, and with that, I just wanted to mention we do have some products that are available, 2 new products that are relatively new anyways. We have what we call a primer on unmanned aircraft system for traffic incident management. And then we have a second one, integrating computer-aided dispatch with with TMCs. So those are available on the Federal Highway website. If you want, we can send you a PDF, but they're available on, if you just Google FHWA Temp program, it's right there under what's new. You can grab those if there's an interest. So with that, I will pass it on to my partner in crime here at Federal Highway Temp program, Mr. Jim Ostrich.
Thanks, Paul, and welcome again, everyone. It's a delight to see again a great number of champions and leaders across the nation, almost 160 of you. We certainly appreciate you, and keep spreading the word about the Great Talking Tim webinars. As Paul said, today's no different. It's going to be very, very interesting, and hopefully we'll all learn something. So one of the things that I wanted to update you about is Crash Responder Safety Week. The planning has begun. You can see the dates in November, where we commemorate the event, and the kickoff of the planning efforts for CRSW 2022 started earlier this month, and we're pleased to share this year's working tagline, which is "Respect Your Roadside Heroes." And other daily outreach themes will focus on how every road user can respect their roadside heroes. This year, we're streamlining all state webinars from the typical 6 down to 3. And this is an acknowledgement that states now have many CRSW strategies as routine and annual practice, and the focus areas of each of the 3 webinars that we'll be discussing are intended for every state, and ideally through participation by both the TIM representatives and leaders and their respective communications and outreach representatives, obviously within their organizations. The platform to collaborate with peers and share effective practices for promoting responder safety and responder training awareness. And of course, a roll call that's been tradition now for 6 years during the webinar for states to share what their activities are. And we're also using an online platform. Don't forget to register for the May 11th all-state webinar and share the invitation with your organizations and PIOs, et cetera, as I said. Please save the date on your calendars, and obviously the National Kickoff Webinar event itself. Next slide here. Our goal again is to get all 50 states, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, to participate in some fashion. We really love the proclamations that were up to 12 states last year that had governors sign a Temp proclamation. And so that's exciting, and hopefully we can maybe double that this year. So highly encourage all of you to participate as a whole and take and get going, because time is really moving quickly. Here we are, May next week. So with that, I'll go real quick into the great news that, you know, we're just shy of 600,000 total responders trained. These are the numbers, the most recent numbers. And this is a big deal, folks. And as I said last call, you all have control of your training. Many of you on here are the actual coordinators and leaders for the your state for the responder training, and whether it's in-person classes that you coordinate with your stakeholders in police, fire, rescue, EMS, towing, and transportation and public works, that is the key. And why we do this, at least as of this morning, I'm sad but glad to see it had not increased. The fact that we're at 22 responder line of duty deaths, and you can see the breakdown here. Again, these are numbers that are still going in the wrong direction. Our dear friends across this nation, and we've got to promote the training, because we know the Temp training saves lives, and that's what it's all about, like Paul said. So keep pushing the training, whether it's in person or web-based. And here's a table showing the breakdown by discipline. I show this every so often right out of the national report. And, you know, we still have a long way to go to hit, you know, that million plus. But we will get there. And hopefully 2022 will be the year that we really increase our numbers now coming out of the pandemic. Next is one of the maps that we show as part of the national status report, and maps here the breakdown between the in-person trained, that number down on the bottom left, 438, 239, versus the total web-based trainings of 127, 392 by state. Any of these numbers, if anybody has questions, or you know how they can access more in-depth data, if you don't know how to, please reach out to Paul, Joe, and myself, and we'll work with you gladly. Again, here's the total number nationally. This is the strategic implementation plan map, or the SIP map, that we launched back in 2014, 2015, which is the population of responders that each state guesstimated or estimated as best they could of responders, all disciplines that needed to be trained. So we're still, I think we're still like 26, I believe, states that have exceeded the last year's, well, the 45% from last year, and I think even 55%, obviously. And always want you to take a look at this, because this is an important goal, and that lower left number that I said, over a million, 1.162. The progress since last report, you can see the breakdown here highlighted. If you're one of the states, on the right side here, down where there's zero productivity, if you see anything that looks suspicious there should not be a 0 or a 1 or a 2 or anything under 100. Actually, if you have any doubts, please reach out to Paul, Joe, or myself, because we know the numbers are not always being reported, especially numbers that are being trained at law enforcement, fire, EMS academies. So sometimes the numbers are just not being reported. Here's the top 10 states. Kudos to all of you here. New York's rocking and rolling, and you can see here the usual. Really, these are the states that have been really pushing. And let's see, last, I think last, our contact info. So it took a little longer there, Paul, but just want, thank everyone, Paul.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go back to the slide for a second, Jim.
Please.
And I want to see some new names on this next week, next month. Come on, let's go, everybody. Don't let New York and Texas and Montana, Michigan kick butt. Come on, let's go. Let's get motivated here. So I know there's some of you out there that can get it done. You know, I'm going to start calling out people like, where's Arizona here? Where all right, never mind. I won't call out anybody, but anyway, so.
Good point, Paul.
Thanks, Jim. So I can't help myself sometimes.
No, good for you. They know.
Thanks, everybody. With that, next, we'll have our next speaker, which is going to be Captain Robert Hainje. And, as we move forward with the next generation of TIM, we know that technology is part of the next generation, and EDC 6 is pushing the use of UAS for other things TIM related, and this and Captain Hainje was involved in a unique use of UAS, and it was for after action review. So we thought that was unique enough to share with you all, and you all up here in Boston. We don't say that, but with everyone here on this call. And so with that, I'll be quiet. You already heard his introduction earlier. So with that, Captain, take it.
Thank you, Jim and Paul. So just over the next few minutes, I'll go over after-action review that we had on I-65. Just give you a little bit of geographical reference. We were using connected vehicle data, and I know many of you are familiar with that, but when we look at the connected vehicle data, we're looking at a couple of captured data points on the movement data, the vehicle trajectories and positioning, timestamp, speed headings, and then we're looking at the event data. And specifically in this particular case, we were looking at those hard braking incidents and where those are at in relation to our incidents. So this is just a screenshot of the vehicle trajectory data captured in 10 seconds. And there's about 100,000 data points that were collected during a peak rush hour period in Indiana on a Friday. So obviously in the center of the screen, that's Indianapolis. So large metropolitan areas, we see that higher concentration. And then our more rural areas, we see those along our major highways and state routes as well. In a period of July of 2020, we captured hard braking and hard acceleration events. And in total, we captured about 20 million data points, with the green showing the hard acceleration points and then the red showing the hard braking points. The differences between those hard braking or hard acceleration points were those where they continued outside of Indiana. So we didn't capture that initial information. So the traffic impact, we started working with Purdue University and Indiana Department of Transportation and started looking at heat map data. So in my position, I'm unique in that I'm a firefighter and EMT. I respond to I-65 in Indiana, and then I'm also captain with the Sheriff's Department, so I've kind of got immersion in all the emergency responding areas. So we started looking at ways that we could show our responders, both police and fire, how their positioning and these incidents make an impact on traffic. So as we're looking at the traffic data, we can collect certain information. So we can do input on date and time of these incidents preceding a crash and after the crash, and see what the effects are. And through Purdue University, we're able to obtain these heat map charts, which show in traffic. So in the middle there, under a normal day, you want that to be green like is displayed there. So we know that's a normal flow of traffic on that particular roadway. And then as Indiana continues to bring on more traffic cameras online, we're looking at the camera views in these areas where these incidents are occurring. So with that data, we look at an incident here where we have, again, the green being normal traffic flow, in this particular case on I-70, that being 65 miles per hour or higher in that area. But then we see when we have a major incident occur, we see those reds and pinks, and in some areas we see white where there's no data, which means traffic's come to a complete stop. So along our y-axis, we can look at specific mile marker areas, and then along the x-axis, we can look at those times over hours or days. Again, just giving us specific information. We can focus in on a specific area and look at how the traffic was flowing through that particular area. So again, just an indication of where we have our Illinois line and our Ohio lines and how traffic flows through there. We'll see slowdowns during major rush hour periods in our metropolitan areas, and that's indicated by the red or slowed traffic. So we can take that information and then overlay hard braking data points that are collected from NDOT. And so we look at those areas where there's significant slowdowns, and then we see the corresponding hard braking data that overlaps with that. So when we look at that, we're trying to determine what the best way is for responders to recognize where we have cues beginning and where we're having those hard braking events, so that we can adjust our early warning devices or early warning vehicles accordingly. So again, this gives you an idea of a crash. As indicated, this happened around the 148 mile marker, and then we can see that this was in the northbound lane, so we see that residual effect of traffic coming to a stop. So the white, again, is when vehicles have come to a complete stop, and that area is at a standstill. So again, I mentioned that Indiana started their TrafficWise camera program, so anybody can go to the 511indiana.org website, and it lists all of the cameras that are available throughout the state of Indiana, traffic cameras. And with that traffic camera information, if we have an incident, we can pull up the corresponding traffic camera to try to get an idea of where the incident may be occurring, where traffic may be queuing. If it's falling between those camera areas, we can see traffic coming into those incident areas. So in this particular case, in January of 2022, we had an incident on I-65. So just to give reference, I-65 runs from Chicago all the way down through Alabama, with Chicago about an hour and a half to the north of Lafayette, Indianapolis an hour south of us. And then again, Indianapolis area is just a major feeder. So Crossroads of Indiana being there in Indianapolis, we bring in I-70, I-74, I-69. So we have a lot of major connector arteries coming in and then leaving out into those other significant areas. So again, this incident took place near Lafayette, Indiana. Subaru Automotive plant has a manufacturing facility at the Lafayette Dayton exit around the 168. So we look at a little bit of the road configuration. We can see we have a nice straight stretch of roadway, and then we have a gradual curve coming into the area. So in this particular incident, we had icing and snow, very quick snow squall came into the area. We saw from that the traffic slowing down. So we saw that we were starting to get icing on the roadway as indicated by the heat maps. From there, we had our first crash occur around 11:05. So we saw that crash as representative in the map. We knew it was in the northbound lanes. So as we were responding to and beginning to work that crash, which was located here, then we ended up having a second crash occur approximately 10 minutes later. Now this crash caused a significant disruption in traffic pattern. As you can see there to the right of where the crash indicator is, we have that slowed and stopped traffic occurring. So we had a semi that had bulb steering tires. That semi tried to change lanes as they were coming past the initial crash and lost control and came into the guardrail. The incident caused both north and southbound lanes to be blocked. The debris went across all southbound lanes, so again, we had traffic stoppage there. So we had the incident occur. We had our fire responders there, and we could see that we had multiple hard braking events as a result of that collision. So as we initially got there, first police officer arrives at 11:19. He gets set up in the southbound lane, fire's responding in the northbound lanes. They start their initial traffic redirection, trying to get traffic moving. We had our second deputy arrive at the scene, and he positioned just north of the scene for the southbound traffic to give that early warning device. But as we can see here, the position of the second police vehicle, we recognize that he wasn't in the line of sight there. So again, positioning of these vehicles, you can see in the picture that as the vehicles are coming into that right-hand curve for them, they obviously couldn't see that second police vehicle that's in the distance there. One thing I'll note, I'll go back here. Again, we talk about the D drivers in Temp training. And again, if you look at this vehicle, the officer didn't take the entire lane, so we had somebody that saw an opening and tried to take advantage of that. So as we began to work the scene, we saw that these hard braking events were continuing to occur. So we knew we had the queued traffic. We had the hard braking events as reported in the data. So as I arrived on the scene, I recognized that we didn't have the best positioning for our police units, and we began to reposition our police units north into the line of sight areas. So as you can see, we transitioned that officer further to the north so that we got him into that area. We began to have a 2 or 3 mile queuing. Once we got that second or third vehicle moved farther north, we recognized now then we could finally have an effective traffic pattern. The key there is we saw a significant reduction and really an elimination in those hard braking events because we now had those police officers positioned so that they were in the line of sight, so the traffic that was approaching that curve saw the emergency vehicles, saw the presence of a scene ahead, and they were able to brake and again adjust their lane movements and traffic patterns. One key thing that we talk about is obviously the use of cones when available. So we had the opportunity to be able to set up a nice cone pattern in that particular area. And again, we see the final positioning here where we had that first police vehicle for approaching traffic was in that line of sight. for oncoming traffic, and then we just spaced our additional responding officers in that area along with our cone patterns to effectively manage that. Each area has their own traffic incident management center. We've been working very hard with our dispatch crews to make early notification to the traffic management centers, and we tell them now with the push out through Waves and other driving apps, as well as the message boards that we have in place, we try to encourage our dispatch teams to make notification to the traffic management center whenever we have a crash, whether it be on a state road or a U.S. route in that area. May not be a highly traveled area, but we at least make notification to the traffic management center and let them make a determination when and where they're going to push out those publicized closures or lane restrictions. Again, in Indiana, we have two traffic management centers. Our main management center is in Indianapolis, and then we have a satellite office up in the Gary area, but they work in conjunction and work as backup. So again, our goal is to notify the traffic incident systems so that we get the early warning out there. Some of the key points that we determined from there, and is an excellent teaching lesson for our deputies on our agency, is to control that traffic flow early and make sure that we focus on those visible sight lines, so that if we're in those hill crest or those curved areas, that we're getting officers placed effectively ahead of those areas so that the drivers can make their movements without having those heartbreaking incidents. And that is all that I have in reference to that.
Thank you, Captain. That was pretty advanced review of the incident and after action. That's very impressive. I know you have great partners there at the state DOT. I know a few of them, and at Purdue, but you seem to have taken a leadership role. So nice work, and it's excellent that you can use all this different technology that I guess that's emerging to get it done. So if you have any questions for the captain, put them in the chat pod. We're going to try to hit the questions afterwards, after all the presentations. We want to make sure we get all the presentations, because we have a tendency to run long, and mostly because I don't stop talking like I'm doing right now. So we'll go on to the next, and Captain, feel free, if it's a short answer and you want to type it in, fine. If you want to wait until after the presentations, then we can answer the question verbally then. So with that, we're going to go to Chief Bill Jenaway from the Responder Safety Institute. You know, for a long time, we have been, you know, a little frustrated about not having good, solid numbers on struck-by incidents. And if it wasn't for the Responder Safety Institute collecting the fatality information, we would just about have nothing. So the numbers that, you know, the Jim shows you each month and that we see on the fatalities are basically collected by Responder Safety Institute, basically by doing glorified web searches. And I know that there's some tools and everything that they use. I don't really understand, but if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have any information. But you know, it's been frustrating to many of us in the Temp community, to Jim and Joe and I in particular, not being able to identify. The other problem is, you know, the fatality is a big deal, right? A big deal. But also a big deal is the injuries, and oftentimes life-threatening injuries. But the crash reports, and there's no real solid method of collecting the data. So Federal Highway has partnered up with the Responder Safety Institute to step up and to come up with a system where, you all can send us some the information if you hear about a struck by, or if you're involved in, a struck by, not necessarily near miss, or I guess Bill will talk to you about that, but we're looking for those, vehicles struck or responders hit in particular. So with that, Bill, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm really happy to take a few minutes here today to present this program to you. And it is a database that we at Cumberland Valley Volunteer Firemen's Association, Responder Safety Institute, have been working diligently with Jim and his team to create the right type of tool that can quickly gather data in the field and submit that data, and then have a methodology where we can take the data, periodically analyze it, and give it back to you in the right forms and formats so that it can be used for advancing the safety of responders. The objectives, the specific objectives, are really twofold. To improve the reporting and tracking, and secondly, as I mentioned, to periodically conduct analysis of the data and identify actions that can be taken to prevent future incidents. And this collection of data and subsequent analysis of it isn't just one element or one aspect. We can look at this and say, wow, here's something we can use to possibly change codes, ordinances, various types of best practices. Here's something we can give to manufacturers to see if they can develop some new personal protective equipment, some new technology that can better warn drivers in advance, and obviously training. So there are sub-elements of this data analysis that become critically important to the long-term success of this type of initiative. I'm happy to report that after having presented this in regional environments about a half a dozen times now, it's been interesting to see individuals say, wow, we had one a month ago, or we had one 2 months ago, and we didn't really have a place to report this. Can we submit them now? And the simple answer to that is, as I'm going to do a demo for you, you can submit them in any time. And all you need to have are the critical data components. And if you can't remember what those critical data components are, we have a form that you can download so that you can keep it in a 911 center, you can keep it on fire apparatus, you can keep it in police cars, you can keep it wherever you want it, so that you can document the information for entry at a later date. So this isn't the type of information where it's a one and done, you have to do it that day. You're going to be able to do this on a basis of your opportunity to submit the information. So today's goal in this session is to review the data collection format and review the data collection site. So to accomplish this, we're going to do a walkthrough, and this is the most challenging piece of my presentation, and that's going to be to shift from this slide presentation to screen share to go to the website so that we can make this happen. So let's see if we can do this without too much of a challenge. And of course, it went away. Okay. Folks, it went away. So we're going to try one more time. Third time's always a charm, isn't it? So we're going to go to the respondersafety.com website. When you go to respondersafety.com, you will go to, as you can see the tabs at the top, the struck by and near miss tab. You will go down to the various links and you will see here, report a struck by incident. Simply clicking on that link will take you to the site where you can then proceed. If you want to do a download of the form with all of the content here, you will see about mid-page, click here to download a paper copy of the form for internal use, etc. So you have that opportunity there to do the download. You can, put the link to something else if you want to do it remotely. If you want to put it so that the link is in a fire apparatus or police car, that's great. Do it. However, technology affords you the opportunity in your locale. So let's go through a very simplistic event. I'm going to go through one that occurred on the 7:35 a.m. and the date was April 25th, 2022, and April the 25th was a Saturday, as I recall. Go to the next screen. Incident type. What type of incident was it? This was a crash scene. And again, you can collect or connect to any or all that apply. There was debris removal involved. There was directing traffic. There was an EMS medical assist. And there was other law enforcement activity that had to occur. Again, if there was something else that occurred, you can clearly put it in and go to the next screen. Incident location. In this particular case, the state was Pennsylvania. The city and town was Bucks County, and it occurred on Route 95, and we can add in milepost 201. You could also put in northbound, southbound, whatever you would care to include at that point, it can be done. What was the roadway type? Well, that's an interstate highway. And of course, you have multiple options here. If there were two that occurred, you could do that. For instance, I was involved in an accident just 2 weeks ago that occurred on an interstate, but I ended up on the ramp. So that would have been 2, and actually the other car ended up on the shoulder. So there could have been 3 different areas of the roadway that the incident occurred on. The roadway location occurred on a shoulder and on a travel lane. And I would add at this point, as we're going through this, this was vetted through a beta test that lasted for roughly 3 months, 4 months, where we were doing test activities from around our team that was involved in this. And we did have to narrow this down a little bit for the reporting purposes, but you'll notice that in each one of these sections, there's an other. So if something does crop up that's not in the boxes, you can clearly put in other and move on by. So what was the weather like that day? Well, it was a little drizzly, overcast. Again, if it was something else happening, you could include that as well. And sight distance. So in this case, was the sight distance impacted by a road feature such as a blind curve or a steep grade? In this case, no, it was a straightaway, and there was nothing here that would adversely affect that. Moving right along. And of course, I'm adding a lot of commentary here. If I were just doing the data entry, we would be done by now. Item 5, the incident responding agencies who responded to that. We had EMS responding, we had fire or fire rescue responded, law enforcement responded, and in this case, Safety Service Patrol responded as well. Safety Service Patrol here can hook the vehicle and take it as well. The next item is incident response activities. For this, each function
I'm not sure.
Each function that responds has its own set of content to reply to. So in this case, the fire department responded. There was no fire, but they did do a little patient care, waiting for EMS to arrive. When EMS arrived, they performed patient care as well. Law enforcement arrived on scene. There was a medical emergency here because, as you can tell, EMS and fire were both treating patients. So they took care of medical emergency first, taking care of the patient, and then helped with vehicle crash investigation. In this case, fire police and traffic control, there was no traffic control that provided, but fire police provided. They deployed advanced warning and a cone taper. They did a little bit of blocking, and they provided for manual traffic control as well. Safety Service Patrol responded, as I mentioned. They deployed temporary traffic control devices, and they removed the debris that existed. And moving right along, DOT or Public Works did not respond here. Towing, as I mentioned, Safety Services was able to clear the vehicle. They had a hook on the back of their vehicle, and there was no other agency that replied, so nothing would be filled in under any agency. Going on to question 7. Type of vehicle that struck a person or an emergency vehicle incident. So these questions relate to either emergency vehicle striking the vehicle or a private vehicle. So in this case, there was no emergency vehicle that struck anything. So nothing needs to be indicated there. The striking vehicle in this case was a civilian vehicle. It was an SUV, and therefore we will indicate the type of vehicle that struck the scene. Moving on to the next one, we talk about persons struck. And in this case, were there fatalities? There were no fatalities of any fire, police, EMS, no fatalities involved in this incident. None of these have to be checked off. None of these have to be entered. Only if there is a fatality would you have to enter the number, and you can see you can simply go in, click on the number, and move on. But since there are none, you don't have to fill it in. Injuries. We had 2 injuries because of the incident. There was 1 firefighter that was struck. There was 1 law enforcement officer that was struck. So we have 2 indicated, and we continue to move on. Others struck. As I mentioned, there was 1 law enforcement person and 1 safety patrol person as well. And you can see again, there's a category for each component, each responding type agency, but you only have to put them in for those agencies that had a subject struck or subject injured. The next, question number 9, emergency vehicle damage or any vehicles struck and damaged. In this case, yes, there was 1 fire department vehicle, a fire police a fire engine was struck in this one. So we're going to click that. We're going to move on traffic management incident information or traffic control devices in place. As I indicated earlier, when the fire police unit got there, they deployed advanced warning. They deployed some cones. So the answer is yes. That then drops down another question which says, what were used? Well, they blocked with apparatus, which was the vehicle that was struck, arrow boards, and advanced warning signs. Again, whatever category was used could be indicated, and other, if you want to go to other, you see that you can type in whatever other might include. Question number 11, and we're close to the end. Were the emergency response personnel hit in this struck by incident wearing high visibility apparel? Some of them were, not all of them. Okay, and you have the opportunity to include additional information. So if you want to give a quick description, you can do that. So in this case, it was a civilian, and please don't grade me on my typing, a civilian in an SUV ignored warning devices, drove into the protected area, and struck a fire engine. I told you, please don't criticize my typing. A fire engine, injuring fire and police personnel. Driver of the SUV was stopped and taken into custody by police. I can then go on, and if you care to, you can put in your email address that will allow you to be contacted if additional information is requested, as these are being analyzed by the team whenever they go back in, make sure the data is correct. If questions crop up, they can reach out to you. And if you have anything else you would like to provide, you can click here, and that will allow the individuals monitoring the system to be able to go in and call you back, reach out to you via email, and get the information that may be available from you. You submit it, it goes into the database, and it simply suggests to you, thank you for submitting a struck by incident report. It's been successfully added to the database. Ladies and gentlemen, that's as simple as it is. As I indicated, there were a lot of additional key points that we could have added into the database. However, these were the components found to be most frequently indicated in the reports being monitored for several years now by Jack Sullivan and the rest of the team at Responder Safety Institute. So we started with this. We're going to let the data run for a short period of time, probably 6 months anyway, so that before we actually do any analysis of the data, there is sufficient data entered that we can do something constructive with it. Clearly, if we went in today, we don't have enough data that we can start to do some cutting, dicing, and slicing that will give us the opportunity to provide realistic, productive, and constructive data for use in future training, development of personal protective equipment, or best practice development. So that concludes my
Bill.
session.
That was
and
yep. Good presentation, Bill. Thanks for sharing that with us. So everybody, I'm calling you out now. Let's go. If you hear about a responder struck by, I mean, Bill took a few minutes there, but if, most of you folks can type faster than that, click faster than that, and really get through the form very quickly, and it will help us. And I'm a firm believer, everything wasn't included for a reason, right? There was this wasn't just Bill and a few people. It was a large group that helped decide how to approach this. But I'm a firm believer in you have to walk before you can run, right, Bill? So that we wanted to, you wanted to make it as user-friendly and simple as possible. So we can start. We need to start collecting the data. And this is a good, really solid way to do it, but we need your help, everybody. So with that, there are a few questions that we'll try to get to. I know we're running along again, so we'll move on to the next speaker, if you will. And that would be Sergeant Thomas Brengel on emergency lighting, some work he's been doing with the Illinois State Police. And I think I already talked about the project, but we ran into, we have another project at Federal Highway that we're looking, we were actually directed by Congress to look at technologies that that could help with improving responder safety. And so we heard about Illinois doing this with the lighting, and we had a conversation, and I thought that it was very much interesting and worthy of talking Tim. So here we are. Sergeant, take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Thomas Brengel. I'm a sergeant with the Illinois State Police. What I want to go over today with you is a project that we did when I worked for District 15, which is one of the patrol districts in the Illinois State Police that specifically covers the Illinois tollway system. So that district's run a little differently from the other state police districts, where procurement is done a little differently. So we were able to research some lighting systems out there from different manufacturers and incorporate what is termed on here as smart lighting into the new 2020 and moving forward Ford Explorers that they have. So the smart lighting title, that was thrown to me by the creators of this webinar, but I stuck with it because I thought it was kind of an interesting title. So I came up with a little acronym, which we're going to kind of go over for SMART. So we're going to talk about how the lighting that we put on our cars was very specific. It provided a meaningful message to the actions of other drivers, both when we were in our moving mode or stationary mode with our warning lights activated. A lot of the equipment and lighting do functions that become automatic, depending if the car's in drive or park. And then with R, we talk about reducing light output, and flash pattern rates. And then the T is tiered. So as you can kind of see on this picture, and there'll be a lot of pictures and videos in this presentation, we want different layers or different tiers of lighting on our emergency cars, our lights on our vehicles. So this is a picture of my squad car several years ago, and admittedly I'm kind of a dork when it comes to lights and radios. So as you can see, my squad car here has a lot going on with it. I put a lot of extra lights on there, and that's all fine and dandy, but you can see here, all that light ends up creating kind of a blur, and it all blends together night or day. That can be pretty confusing to an approaching motorist on what we want them to do. And the lights, like I say, they blend together here. It kind of looks almost purple. So what does that really mean? So the challenges we were seeing on some of our cars, and you know, as a community of first responders, police, fire, EMS, anyone working on the roadside, we know that lighting over the last few years has evolved dramatically, where lights used to be rotating lights, strobe lights, they'd oscillate, they'd rotate, but now with the technology, you know, LED light emitting diodes are commonplace in most of our cars now. And with that, the technology is evolving that allows us to do different things. So we have to overcome some challenges with that. So we want to move away from just having one tier of lighting on our cars. So instead of just having a light bar on top, we want to kind of create different levels of lighting. And there's reasons for that, which we'll kind of cover here in a minute. The flash pattern rates, you know, you see a lot of the squad cars where they're flashing really, really rapidly. But when you get on scene, we want to change that. Flash patterns are not synchronized across the cars. So you could have one light that's flashing, 300 flashes a minute, another one that's doing 60 flashes a minute. It's confusing. It can be disorienting, especially at night. We want to avoid mixing colors of lights. Putting a red and a blue light next to each other, we want to kind of keep those reds next to each other and blues next to each other. We want the colors on our lights to have meaning and to help gain compliance with move over laws. And we want to reduce flashing white lights when we're stopped. Those can be blinding. So we need to learn how to manage our LED lights that we have now. And the biggest thing is gaining attention of drivers and communicating a message to them, whether we're responding to the scene or we're stationary at a scene. So let's see if we can get these videos to play. This is a video of one of the District 15 cars that we had initially incorporated lighting on different tiers. So you see a light bar up top at the top, then the middle is that arrow stick, some of the rear strobes in the back, and then down by the bumper So this is a good example of tiered lighting, but as you can see, the mix of lights, they kind of all blend together. Things are doing and flashing at a different rate. It can get a little disorienting, and if you look at this from a mile or two away, the red and the blue, they all blend together. We wanted to kind of overcome that and create a better signal. So what are our goals with smart lighting? What did we want to do when we were in District 15? We knew that we were going to be going with Ford Explorers as a primary patrol vehicle. So we had to overcome the height of the vehicle. We wanted to create a nice strong signal from a far distance. And we wanted to use that whole vehicle, the size of that vehicle, to help achieve a large profile of lighting from a greater distance. So that's where the tiered lighting comes into play. Illinois State Police, we've suffered greatly in 2019 with the loss of a handful of troopers. Several within that year, the crashes were directly related to move over law violations, and we continued to get hit. So we wanted to improve move over laws with our lighting. We want people to immediately recognize our vehicles on the road as law enforcement vehicles and convey a message. We want our lights to reduce confusion, and we want to calm the scene when we get on scene. So what does that mean? That means we're going to slow our flash patterns down. We're going to synchronize our flashing lights, convey a certain message. And doing all that doesn't mean that we always have to add extra lights to our cars or make them brighter. Sometimes it means that we have to remove some lights, or be smart about the placement, and we actually have to dim them depending on ambient conditions. So placing the lights, where do we want to place them on the car? Again, a tiered system, high, middle, and low, depending on the profile of the cars. So up high, whether you have a light bar or interior light bars up by the headliner, kind of midship, down by in the window areas, rear view mirror areas, side view mirrors, and then low down by like the bumpers, especially from the rear. We want the lights to cover 360 degrees, front, sides, and rear, and the light placement on the car should really help outline the profile of the vehicle. The color of the lights, what we want them to do, the District 15, we were able to acquire lights, light heads that produce multicolors. So the whole entire light head at one time will produce a red color, and then the next flash, the whole light would produce a blue color, depending on how we do that. And I have some pictures here to show that. The reason for that versus just splitting the light head in half is, again, that's going to produce a brighter, bolder signal from a greater distance. Lights to the front of the car, we wanted them to stay red, blue, and white. In Illinois, our trooper vehicles have to have red and blue on them. By statute, I know some states have different statutes when it comes to what vehicles can be on law enforcement vehicles. But in Illinois, we're red and blue. And we also incorporate white to the front. The sides, red, blue, and white. White helps with the when we're in moving mode for clearing traffic and requesting right-of-way. And then to the rear, we limit it to red, blue, and we incorporated some amber elements. So this picture here kind of shows the placement of our lights on our vehicles. So the very, very top there would be if we had a light bar. Everything on the front would be red and blue. Red's on the driver's side, blue's on the passenger side, and the multicolored lights, we also have white. Again, those will flash when we're in drive. It rapid flashes to be attention grabbing the motorists to gain compliance to move over, and then request right of way. And we also use those in stationary mode only in a flood or takedown feature when we're trying to illuminate something in front of us. Otherwise, they automatically will turn off and they'll just be red and blue, but we'll see some videos of that here in a minute. Side ship or side warning lights, we wanted to keep, depending on the side of the vehicle, still that same scheme with blue lights on the passenger side, red on the driver's side, with some elements of lighting throughout the vehicle again. So up by the front bumper, the nose of the car, then moving kind of mid-vehicle by the rear view or side view mirrors, the B-pillar, and then back in the cargo area, mounting them both again up high as we could, and then a little bit lower to help outline the profile of the vehicle if we're clearing an intersection or blocking a ramp or a roadway. The sides of our vehicles remain illuminated. And again, if this was a marked vehicle, there'd still be a light bar on top with some elements of that facing to the side. The rear, again, red and blue is our primary warning color, and then we incorporated some amber elements in there on the duo-colored light heads. Again, top, middle, and low. So the two top bars, one would be if you had a light bar, the second one would be if it was an interior light bar. And then we also flashed the tail lamp flashers that were factory installed to help incorporate some more midship lighting on there. So when it comes to flash patterns, we want to synchronize them across the vehicle, again, to produce all those lighting elements at once to flash, to produce a brighter signal at a greater distance, to encourage people to see our vehicle from a greater distance so they move over, they know what the intended message is, that something up ahead is not normal, right? We don't sit on the side of the road just because we have nothing better to do. We're there because we're working. So our lights mean something is happening. We need drivers to pay attention to that. We want to get their attention and have them move over. In the stationary mode, we made our vehicles automatically slow all the flash patterns to a very slow, calm, alternating flash pattern rate. We'll see some videos with that. When the car goes into park, all the all the white flashing elements like the wig-wag headlamps, all that automatically turns off. The officer forgets to turn off the siren, that will automatically turn off. Whereas in driving mode, they're incorporating rapid flash patterns across the vehicle to request right of way. We're flashing white lights to the front to do that. So a lot of this that I'm talking about, all the main, if you will, lighting manufacturers out there now have their own variant of a smart lighting package, or I like to call it a brain box, where basically all the lights will plug into this brain box, and then you program the brain box through computer software. You tell the car what you want it to do. You can read signals from the car, like if the driver's braking, if the door is open, and pretty much anything. You can plug the brain box into the OBD2 port in the car. It reads all those signals, and then you can have the lights do certain things, and it's really limitless now, almost to the point where some manufacturers even have features where you can synchronize one vehicle to another vehicle or multiple vehicles. So if you can imagine the power of, say, 3 or 4 squad cars trying to block a road all together, you could have the rear traffic advisors, or what we call the TA, all flashing, the right arrow, and they would all be in perfect synchronization with each other. How strong of a signal that's going to be from a mile or two away, daytime or night, how bright LEDs are, that's going to be something we'd like to incorporate moving forward. That's kind of a new thing that some of the manufacturers have out there, but it's seeing it as very impressive in person. And using this brain box, again, every vehicle in your fleet will be programmed the same, which is great. So a little more advanced with the brain boxes, again, reading features. What we did in the tollway, District 15, we incorporated some of these situational-based events that I'll show you videos of. When we apply the brakes, when our lights are on, they do certain things. When the car's in moving mode versus stationary mode, it does different stuff. When we come to scene and we put the vehicle in park, it'll automatically kill the sirens, turn off light flashing lights. When the driver's door open, we have certain lights dim. We have a photo cell installed in all the vehicles, so it'll sense ambient light. If it's dark outside, the lights will automatically reduce power, so they are not as bright. They're still bright, but they're not as bright, so that kind of helps calm the scene at night to approaching vehicles. People aren't blinded. We incorporated some cruise light or steady flash patterns, and then my personal favorite is our traffic advisor that also flashes red and blue. So let's take a look at everything I've talked here with some videos. So on the left, the old Ford Taurus there, that's the previous generation with lighting, and on the right, that's our new feature. This is comparing these two vehicles in park mode. So if we buffer here, you'll see on the left the flash pattern, the lights, they all kind of blend together. It's all rapid. Where on the right, the light bar synchronizes with the bumper lights and the lights by the license plate light. We're incorporated single flash 60 is the flash pattern on this. We incorporate some amber elements in there to really help the light pop. And that's kind of what we're trying to achieve here when the vehicle's in park, is producing a bigger, brighter signal from a greater distance. So when we were taking these videos, it ended up snowing, which at first was kind of a nuisance. But if you can see here with this video, it was kind of a blessing. So this is a perspective from inside a vehicle, simulating a driver approaching these two vehicles side by side, but the windshield is obstructed by snow and rain, and the wiper hasn't gone yet. So if you can compare the flash patterns through this distortion, you'll see that our new car on the right, it's producing a slower flash pattern, so it's easier to track that with the eye. Versus the left, it's kind of a rapid flash rate. It's kind of harder to tell the profile of the vehicle, whereas on the right, you can easily identify it's a law enforcement vehicle. And that flash pattern, it's producing nice bold red and bold blue colors with some amber into it to outline the whole vehicle. That's what we're hoping for, is to gain some of that compliance. This video here is going to demonstrate something called active braking. So the vehicle on the left, the flash pattern, keep in mind that's what it is. It's programmed that way whether you're in drive or you're in park. Where on the right, the vehicle is actually in drive, and you'll see the rapid flash pattern. And then as the driver applies the brakes, the light pattern on the rear of the vehicle is going to change. You'll see a rapid flash, and as soon as the brakes are hit, we slow the flash pattern. We make some of the lights over by the license plate area turn solid red to enhance a braking signal. The signal produced by the tail lamp flasher goes to solid red, and the lamps, or the warning lamps in the bumper, also slow down. So if you can imagine being a following vehicle, whether you're another law enforcement officer or someone else following this emergency vehicle, it's evident that that vehicle is now applying its brakes. So the following vehicle is able to slow down and not be overwhelmed, or more importantly, the brake lamps are not washed out by the flashing warning lights. It's clear that that emergency vehicle is slowing and braking. Next one here, this is kind of moving mode, or what we call code 3. So the vehicle's in drive, and we're going to flash warning lights on the left, the new vehicle, red, white, and blue to the front with the takedown lamps. Unfortunately, we're buffering here a little bit. And then when we go and arrive on scene and we go into park, it'll automatically turn off the white lamps, and the red and blue lamps will go to a very slow, steady flash pattern. Again, that's about 60 flashes per minute, and there's actually some solid red and blue lights to the front as well. So if you see this from a mile or two away, it's evident it's a law enforcement vehicle. There's some flashing lights, but the signal is clear that it's stationary, and it's not requesting right-of-way. We have different patterns depending on if we're in position 1, 2, or 3 on the slide switch box that activates the lights. This is just an example of a slide switch 2, where it's just red and blue at a rapid flash rate. Video doesn't really do this justice when the light bar is actually flashing in drive. It actually stays illuminated the whole time, so there's never any dead space in the light bar. The red strobe will be very bright, and then when the blue side is flashing, it's also still red on the other side. And that remains true even in park. It picks up a little funky with the camera here. But you'll see, again, when we're in park, the difference between the two vehicles. And, advance here. And then we'll go to the next slide. 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 This is what we just call cruise mode or steady flash, where the lights will stay on for steady burn. They don't turn off. We use this if we're at an oasis area or a public area where we need to create a high police visibility presence, or if we're downstream of a roadway incident where the roadway behind us is closed or the lanes are closed, rather than overwhelming other drivers with a bunch of emergency vehicle lights with flashing lights. We can just turn them on and they'll flash every few seconds, and it just helps drivers of passing vehicles not be as overwhelmed with all the vehicles on scene having flashing lights. So this is my favorite feature that we programmed in. It's called the Advanced Traffic Advisor, or TA. What this will do is the driver or the vehicle operator can activate the left arrow, the right arrow, or center out, and it'll flash for 3 seconds, the arrow, and then it'll bounce to a warning mode, and it'll cycle through that every 3 to 4 seconds. So it's kind of saying, hey, I'm an emergency vehicle. Here are my red and blue lights that designate me as that. I want you to go left, right, or center out, whatever the case may be. And I have a couple videos here of this actually being used on the interstate, and our compliance level that we found. It's nothing scientifically done, but District 15 has probably about over 100 of these vehicles out now, and the operators of them all report that when they're using this feature, the compliance level with move over laws here in Illinois seems to be a lot better. There's an improvement with the motoring public when they're seeing this signal from as they approach us. So this is a view of the new version on the right versus the old arrow stick on the rear deck of that car. And this really helps show how much more bold of a signal this is providing to approaching motorists, what we want them to do, identifying us as an stationary emergency vehicle, and what we want them to do, what we're intending for them to do. So this squad car, that's me here on the right shoulder. Can't see the arrow stick to the behind, or what's being displayed behind of the vehicle, but take my word for it, I have that flash pattern that you just saw. It's the left arrow. If you can see here how far back we're getting compliance on vehicles to move over. We stood up here, we had this set up for about 20 minutes out here, stationary, so we just took a couple clips showing the compliance, but I would say for a good majority of the time that we were out here roadside, we had really good compliance with people moving over. Pretty far back. If you look all the way back by that other overhead gantry, people are already starting to see this signal and starting to move over well in advance on the approach to a stationary emergency vehicle, which is exactly what we want them to do. Final video here just shows the response mode where I'm arriving on scene. You can see the active braking. And when I go into park, the TA comes on, and vehicles seeing me there and moving over and doing what we're hoping for them to do. Identify us as an emergency vehicle and give us room to work and comply with the move over law. So that's really my presentation in a nutshell. I can go into a ton of extra stuff with this, but I'm not going to do that with the time. So my email address is up there. If you want to reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to talk your ear off about the project that we did at the tollway and the system that we went with, extra features, and I have some other reference documents. And when it comes to some of the material that I used when I put the proposal together about flash pattern rates, incorporating different light colors, amber elements, all that, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir with some of the people on the conference call, but there's a couple publications cited there that I had used. I appreciate it. That's all I had.
Thank you, Sergeant. That was an awesome presentation. Really, really an interesting topic that we've been, thinking about for a long time. Is there a way lone responder out there, right? The police officer that's doing a traffic stop or just out there by himself. Same thing with fire trucks and tow operators. Is there something that that we can do? Because in our research, the researchers kept coming back with, oh yeah, you do, all this equipment cones and that one responder by themselves can't do anything to help themselves beyond maybe a few minor steps. They can't carry a lot of equipment. So this could be a solution. It's not the solution necessarily, but it's a solution. I think it's awesome. I think it has a lot of potential that we will look into. And Sergeant, I got to follow up with you. I'd like to get that video. We have another project that we're, as Congress asked us to look over, move over law compliance, and we have a software that's been able to count the vehicles that move over and slow down, and the software can do that. But it would be interesting to be able to say, well, this is what we have with the smart lighting. This is what we're finding, and we'd love to be able to report that to Congress. Because guess what we need, Sergeant and everybody else out there, and Sergeant, you know this. You need funds to be able to equip our responder vehicles with this. Most of us know that Turnpike means they have more flexibility with funding to support equipment and research and projects like this that many of the other agencies don't have. We would love to be able to figure a way out to get some funding so that we can start equipping this. I thought the smart, what did you call it? The brain box that you can sort of program things has some big potential there too. So as we move forward, so thanks again, Sergeant. Appreciate it. And I'll be following up with you for some other research if you don't mind. Thanks to all the presenters today. You're all great as expected. I do want to go back to a question we asked. It was asked early on about the training in this, and I think it was my friend Rusty James, an old friend, one of the top instructors in the country. The numbers that were developed, that were estimated on number of responders. So the way that process worked was we asked the responders, the states to, guesstimate, and then all it is a guesstimation. You really can't. You really were unable to find an exact number of how many responders are actually active at one particular time. So we asked the states to do a guesstimate. We gave them some guidelines. We gave them some recommendations. The process for doing that. Someone in California had come up with a process for doing that, and we. We just left it up to the states to do those estimates. The reason why Georgia is 112%, for example, is because they only put a low number, an estimated number of EMS to be trained, that needed to be trained in Georgia. Well, it turns out that in Georgia they required, I think they allowed the credits, continuing ed credits for EMS personnel for this certification, and some sort of requirement. I'm not exactly sure of the details, but anyways, there was some opportunities, and then some, I think, online training that allowed EMS to, the EMS numbers to go way out of whack. So we asked Georgia to adjust it, and so actually some other states that apparently underestimated the number of responders that needed to be trained. But Rusty, I think it's your question. There's really no way we wouldn't be able to tell who's active, who's not active. It's hard enough to get the numbers of who was trained at a particular session. There was, 5 police, 10 fire, 3 tow, that sort of thing. Our contractor Katie Belmore collects. It's an ongoing challenge actually to do that. So, but point taking, we need to. I guess the point is that those numbers are all well and good, and we needed to have a goal years ago when we set up the training numbers. We needed to have something to shoot for. What is the extent of the problem, if you will? And those were those numbers that were at 10. But there's been attrition. There's been people retired. There's new folks come on. We're hoping that there's more training going on. But you're right. I don't know that we'll ever have a solid number with that. So I think there were some other questions here. Bill Jenaway, does someone monitor to make sure that 2 or more people that enter the same incident into the database? Is there some way to check on that when that happens?
That'll be done when it gets reviewed on the back end.
I see. Yeah, that's right. Bill, you said that you're going to let it run for 6 months, see how it goes, and then do some review there.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Kevin, the colleague questions have been answered, right?
Yes, that's correct. Captain Hainje and Sergeant Brengel have answered a few of them in the chat.
Okay. And then there was a question for you again, Bill. Can the work zone portion of the work zone perimeters also include incident work zone? And I think Bill answered that we keep it, you kept it simple that in the, in the first edition of this, it may be
correct, Paul. Yes, correct. We could have had twice as many checkoff boxes, for lack of a better term. But what we tried to do was get it down to the most frequently used. And then if there is something that's not covered, put it in the other category.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's important.
Then when we do the review, then when we do the review, Paul, we would be able to see where if there were 10 or 12 or 15 of them that came out as the same item, then we can modify the form.
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one thing I have learned that a couple of things when you're dealing with data, and I know almost nothing about data, but what I do know is that you need to start off slow and as simple as possible, or you get nothing, or you go backwards. So that and then you learn as you go too. Just as you said, if you see an item that was obviously missed, you can add that data element in there later. So that's a good point. Okay. I think we've got all the questions, Kevin. I think we got that.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. So again, thank you for all our speakers, to everyone who participated today. We really enjoy these sessions. Jim Ostrich, Joe Tebow, and myself. We enjoy seeing everybody. A lot of friends out there, both old and new, but a lot of old friends. I'm seeing a lot of old names today. Bring back fond memories of many of you. So with that, 2 minutes to 3. We worked out well, so if there's anything else that anyone needs, you know where to find us here at Federal Highway. And of course, the speakers are all accommodating folks, so if you have any questions directly for them later on, I'm sure they'll accommodate. So with that, stay safe, everybody. Take care.